morning, I'm Dani Laurel. It is Friday, the 6th of March, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. It is a busy morning over at the Sandigan Bayan as pre-trial proceedings continue for former Senator Bong Revilla's malversation case. Senator Erwin Tulfo calls out government personnel for allegedly deserting their positions or posts in the Middle East. Tulfo says it is unacceptable that officials from the DFA, DMW, and OWA evacuated themselves first while thousands of OFWs were left scrambling for safety. And Sheila Guevara has apologized to Ann Curtis, stating that she and her children do not agree with the controversial analogy used by her husband, Representative Bong Suntay. Guevara also urged the public to respect her family's privacy and spare them from the ongoing political backlash. Welcome to our program Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda, pre-trial proceedings continue in the malversation case against former Senator Bong Revilla and several co-accused before the Sandigan Bayan. Now, this comes as the trial in the separate graft case linked to an alleged ghost flood control project in Bulacan is set to begin on April 7th. Now, both the prosecution and the defense say they are prepared to present their witnesses and evidence once the trial begins. And for the details, let's bring in Mobile Journal Arles de los Santos. Arles, what should we expect from the proceedings today?
Dani, ngayon nga ay asahan natin yung pagkahantahe ng mga paghahanda para nga sa magiging main trial kaugnay ng malversation case ni dating Senador Bong Revilla dito sa Sandigan Bayan 3rd Division, kung saan ilang minuto lamang ay dumating na nga yung poster ng Quezon City Jail. Ludan itong dating senador kasama yung kapwa mga akusado nito na dati ring mga opisyal ng Bulacan 1st District Engineering Office na sina Bryce Hernandez, JP Mendoza, RJ Dumasig at Juanito Mendoza. Gayon din yung dalawa pa nitong kapwa akusado noon ng mga babae na nagmula naman sa female dormitory ng Quezon City Jail. At dito nga kung makikita ninyo sa aking harapan medyo nakabantay ang ating otoridad dahil nga ngayon ay nandito muli yung mga taga-suporta ng dating senador kung saan ipinananawagan nila na absueltuhin nga si Revilla dahil nila ay si Yusek Bernardo daw ang dapat na mas panagutin dahil ito raw ang mas may utak doon nga sa mga anomalya na nangyayari sa pamahalaan kaugnay partikular sa mga flood control projects. Si Yusek Bernardo daw ang kabahagi talaga ng DPWH at hindi daw si dating Senador Bong Revilla. Pero kung matatandaan natin, Dani, si Revilla ay dating namuno doon nga sa Public Ways and Means ng Senado nang siya pa ay nakaupo bilang bahagi ng Kongreso. Dani.
Arles, what type of evidence or witnesses are both camps expected to present once if this goes to trial?
Well, at least Dani, yung kasama doon sa kanilang mga witnesses, pero sa isang kaso yon sa graft case ay yung ilang mga testigo, hindi pa na-disclose kung sino-sino yon in particular, pero yung ilan doon ay mga bahagi ng DPWH and syempre yung doon mismo sa Bulacan, dahil ito nga yung natagpuan na umunoy ghost flood control project doon sa Bulacan na nagkakahalaga ng 92.8 billion pesos. Nung mga nakaraan, matatandaan din natin na si Revilla ay isinama sina Bryce Hernandez at JP Mendoza sa listahan ng kanyang mga testigo. So aabangan talaga natin kung paano nga ba mag-unfold itong pasagutan ng depensa at ng prosekusyon dito sa dalawang kaso na nakahain sa Sandigan Bayan. Pero bago yan, Dani, papakita ko lang sa iyo kung gaano karami yung tao dito, yung mga taga-suporta ni dating Senador Bong Revilla na yung ilan sa kanila ay alas 6 pa lamang ng umaga ay nakahanda na para nga salubungin at isigaw ang kanilang posisyon dito sa anilay panggigipit sa dating senador. Ito yung sitwasyon dito ngayon, Dani. Yung ating mga kababayan mula sa Cavite, hawak-hawak dito yung sinasabi nila na placard na hindi ka nag-iisa, Senador Bong Revilla, Justice will prevail, at ito pa, itigil ang mga maling paratang. Pero dito sa kabila, Dani, ay meron pa din mga kababayan tayo na nananatili na may mga hawak na placard at ipinananawagan ngayong kanilang posisyon dito sa nangyayaring nila ay panggigipit nga daw sa dating senador na nililitis para sa graft case at malversation case dito sa Sandigan Bayan. Dani.
Arles, last question. No? This is not the first time that former Senator Bong Revilla has been charged. Earlier on, there were charges of plunder, multiple counts of malversation. He was already arrested in 2014. And then he was acquitted of these crimes and then went back to the Senate. What's the expectation this time around?
Hindi pa natin nakakausap, Danny, in particular, no, yung legal counsel ni dating Senador Bong Revilla para sa araw na ito, no? Pero paulit-ulit naman yung kanilang posisyon na nila ay hindi nagkaroon ng kumpleto, no, na legal process itong pagharap nga ng dating senador, kagaya na lamang ng iginigiit nila, no, na hindi sila nabigyan ng kopya ng reklamo sa kanila sa isa sa dalawang kaso, kaya nga hindi ito naghain ng kanyang plea, no, not guilty or not guilty man sa 3rd Division ng Sandigan Bayan, dahil nila ay meron talagang inaapela sila at yung kanilang posisyon ay nananatili. Pero handa naman yung kampo ng dating senador sa ilan nating mga panayam sa kanila na depensahan nga ang innocence nito. Ngayon din ay ipagsigurado na mapepresenta nila ang mga ebidensya para nga mapatunayan na innocent.
Maraming salamat for that report, Mobile Journal Arles de los Santos. Meanwhile, Sheila Guevara, the wife of Quezon City 4th District Representative Bong Suntay, apologized to actress Ann Curtis following the controversial remarks made by her husband during a recent House hearing. In a social media post, Guevara said she and their children do not agree with the analogy used by the lawmaker. She underscored that every woman, regardless of status or background, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Guevara also appealed to the public to spare her family from the controversy, noting that she and her children are private individuals. Don't go away. We will be back with more stories after this quick break. Good morning, I'm Dani Laurel, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. Iran says the death toll from U.S. and Israeli strikes has climbed to 1,230 days after fighting began. The Iranian Red Crescent Society said at least 105 civilian sites have been hit, with more than 1,300 attacks recorded across 636 locations. The conflict erupted after the United States and Israel launched joint strikes on Tehran and other Iranian cities, which Iranian officials say killed Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, members of his family, and several top commanders. Iran has since responded with waves of missile and drone attacks targeting Israel and U.S. assets across the Middle East. The escalating conflict has also raised concerns over global oil supply, especially in the Strait of Hormuz, a critical shipping route where much of the world's oil, particularly supplies headed to Asia, passes through. Meanwhile, the U.S. House of Representatives rejected a resolution that would have required congressional approval for military action against Iran. The measure failed 219 to 212, effectively backing President Donald Trump's ongoing military campaign as the conflict enters its 6th day. Trump has also said the U.S. is open to providing naval escorts to keep shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz open. That's a statement that helped global markets and stocks rebound. Amid the uncertainty, the Philippine National Oil Company says it is working to procure an additional 5-day supply, or about 1 million barrels of diesel, to help ensure local energy security. And here to help us dive deeper into this geopolitical crisis, we have with us Amze Galebi, Iranian analyst and commentator, and a former political activist and reformist who played a key role in the 2009 Green Movement. Good morning, Amze, and thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
Tough question. First of all, I hope you and your loved ones are safe in these trying times. How are you feeling?
Really concerned because my country is carpet bombing and the internet is cut and it's difficult to get news. So it's concerning.
It's a bit confusing to us as outsiders to understand whether the situation should be celebrated. It's the end of 47 years of oppression, and you see people celebrating on the street. It also be condemned in terms of the manner that it is escalating and happening right now? Give us an idea of how polarized the situation is in Iran, because you still see some people crying over the death of the killed supreme leader.
The context is the situation in Iran is tough. We talk about situation that we have authoritarian political system, which and there is a tough economic situation in Iran. That is clear and it's for sure. And we had an uprising which end up to having killing thousands of the people based on the official numbers. However, bombing a country and carpet bombing a country, I don't see the majority of the people take it as something positive. However, for sure, mostly from the royalist movement outside of Iran, they celebrate killing of the Khamenei.
How many people are still supporting the regime? Do you have some figures here just in terms of percentages that are still hoping for a transition, at least towards the Supreme Leader's son, who is still alive?
It's difficult to give the number. However, during the war, something could be shift. In the fact that the people, not just because they support the regime, because they rely behind the flag and they are under attack, actually this situation can reinforce regime and help them to unite their social base, which is already happened the case. The U.S. bets that if they kill the top commander, the head of the state, that's turned out to collapse and potential uprising haven't materialized. So the regime showed the capacity to absorb the shock and united their base behind the flag and keep retaliate. So for now, at least, this hypothesis, this bet doesn't materialize. And I don't see the fact that shows, at least in the short or midterm, that can materialize. That doesn't guarantee of internal stability in the long run. But in short run, we could say this assumption has failed.
That is very interesting, and I will go back to you on this specific point. Let's go back to your point earlier that you said the people that are celebrating this are those outside of Iran. It's not a surprise that this happened. Trump has threatened attacks on Iran. Israel has been on ongoing wars with Iran for many, many years now. It was an imminent threat. During the protests that we just saw, did they already expect some level of intervention to be happening by the U.S. as the only way to end this, to overthrow this? Was this something that was truly an expectation?
From the people who manifest?
Correct. It was a true possibility.
For sure, there was a fraction of the people that expect that, and actually the U.S. and Israeli, they are so active to promote the demonstration and the promise that they can intervene. However, I'm not sure that even though that is for clearly that was the case, and part of people desperately even embrace the external invasion, I don't have any fact that show this is the majority of the people that went to the street. They want to be bombed by U.S. as a way to be liberated.
What were they hoping for?
The majority of the people hope for change. The situation is tough. The economy doesn't work. There is a mismanagement and suffering for long period of the U.S. sanctions, and we have a lot of abuse of the power, freedom compromise. So for sure that majority of the people are fed up with the situation and they want to change. But translate this automatically to that they want to get bombed. There is not enough fact to say this is something the majority of the people who are fed up the situation they want.
Let's step back in history, Amze. Not everything was roses before this current regime. And in fact, they are touting that the new leader, at least part of the opposition, not the full opposition, could be the son of the Shah, who was himself overthrown in the 1979 revolution because of being authoritarian, because of deep economic equality. Can you give us an idea of do the people want to go back to this situation either?
There is 2 points. There is the majority of the people fed up, and they are looking for some way to change the situation. That's I think is a common consensus that everyone can approve that.
Okay.
However, if the solution is of son of the previous Iran dictator as a solution, there are people who say that, but they are not majority. But the majority of the people, they want change, and they want to try different means for this change. The son of Shah gets some more popularity recently. However, he encouraged the bombing campaign and even doesn't show any sympathy for the Iranian who were killed during the recent war. I feel there is a downside, his popularity go down. So for sure they are a force, but not the strong force, at least. As even the Trump in the recent interview said, he preferred to work with someone through who is underground and have a foot on the situation.
But the regime, if you can call it also a regime, before the revolution was very linked or allied to the West. In fact, they were allies with Israel. Why is this not being pushed by US and Israel?
Why is not pushed?
Yes, why is let's say the transition to go back to the son of the Shah, for instance, given that the relationship between US and Israel and Iran was good, quote unquote, during that time?
There is a gap between what they want to do and what they can to do and what they can manage to do. And what the experience that had from the previous nation building or regime change in Iraq and in Afghanistan. Apparently, one of the conclusions of the U.S. Administration and U.S. state is going underground and build a state from scratch is a failed experience. Their ideal situation is templating what they did in Venezuela, means killing the head of the state, deal with someone in the system, not building from the scratch. So son of Shah is a figure that they can use for creating the political instability, but is not the figure that can actually go and lead the government, the country of 90 million people who already overthrew his father, and he has a supporter, but there is really engaged people against him as well. So I don't think that the U.S. bets on this person, however they use it, and already some of the path to this ideal template of Venezuela is failed. Means the hope that by killing the head of the state, and bombing the governmental infrastructure, the systems collapse, and there is upraise. That doesn't happen.
Regardless of who becomes the next leader, are Iranians open to closer ties or less hostile ties with the West?
It's changed during the time. Means because before revolution we had the U.S. coup in Iran against the democratic government of Mossadegh, which triggered the anti-American sentiment, which is its peak was during the revolution. But this go down means the people gain more positive opinion toward the West, and its maximum, we could say, during the JCPOA, we have really positive attitude toward the West and the US especially, and there was huge pressure from the society toward the government to negotiate with the US. But there is something that has changed, means the Iranian, after this pressure, they did actually negotiation, they make a deal, and the Trump threw it apart. And recently also the government managed to show that we were in a negotiation when we get bombed, and this is not the matter of negotiation. Now it's a survival defensive posture. So I would say there was a strong hope in the Iranian society to go through the diplomacy and have a good relation with the West and the US. That could change the turn again after this bombing campaign, especially if, as we see, civil damage and the girl school get bombed. So that could change the turn of the history in Iran, and anti-West sentiment can grow again.
I want to press you on that. This sentiment was present. Let's say the waning of the anti-West sentiment was happening during this regime.
This happened before the regime, means one of the reasons that we had the revolution, because as U.S. Managed to coup against the Mossadegh government, which was the prime minister in the Shah period, as a democratic elected government and the leader of a democracy movement in Iran. So from that time toward the revolution, the the resentment or anti-U.S. sentiment keep increasing until the revolution. For a while, also during the war between Iran and Iraq, as U.S. supported Iraq, that was the happen. But actually, this go down, and we had the most positive point of view toward the U.S. in the Middle East, in Iran, and it's reached its max during the end of the Obama period, during the after the JCPOA. But it could turn the other way in after this war.
Can you educate us quickly on the Muslim factions and the Islamic Republic, or this ideology? Is it possible to not support a theocratic state? Are you going to be looked at as an enemy to your religion, to your country, the moment you begin to question a supreme leader? Are people still looking for a theocratic state, but perhaps in, let's say, a more West-friendly way, obviously a less oppressive regime? Is this still something on the table?
I would say majority of the people the main concern is economic prospect, that have a country that can manage the economy, when this is the main concern, and everyone wants peace. And the majority of the people don't want autocracy. The challenge is when the external danger happen, the religious fraction, they can present themselves as the only the force to resistance against invasion. So that can change the turn.
Okay, give us an idea on the Iran-Israel ideological war, because behind this is, they were allies before 1979, but there is now this existential threat to the concept of Israel as a state, but also to the physical existence of Israel. There were threats, even interpreted as genocide. Is this something that could ever be diplomatically settled between two states that basically hate the existence of each other?
For me, it's more a geopolitical issue than ideological issue. The Israel security doctrine is they need to be dominant in the Middle East, and no one can challenge them and retaliate them. And for now, the only country in the Middle East that can retaliate or can have face the Israeli force is Iran, Pakistan and Turkey. So if the Iran fail, Israel going toward the Pakistan, the Turkey. So it's more geopolitical issue than ideological challenge. In this way, this can settle if we reach in the point that neither of the side can say I can eliminate other side by physical force, by military force. So it's more than, for me, the balance of the power in the region, which Israel try to keep its dominance, and Iran and some other country like Turkey and Pakistan resist. And this is source of instability.
What do the people of...
For me, it's less a question of ideology, it's more geopolitical challenge.
Okay, and the people of Iran are supporting this sovereignty, I imagine. And what is their sentiment now towards Israel, especially as also the Gaza issue is there, and Iran was supporting Hamas, which is touted, of course, as a terrorist group. Where do people position in this situation?
I would say for a fraction of Iranian, they are resentment toward what's happened in Gaza and consider as a genocide. But majority of the people, what they concern is sovereignty of Iran. So that's the fact that Iran is in danger from the Israel. In my understanding, the matter is less humanitarian or ideology, is more sovereignty and security and geopolitical affairs. So it's depend of situation. It's really depend of situation. Historically, every time in Iran, doesn't matter the regime who is in charge or who is in the head of the state, when the Iranian feel they are in danger, we could expect a rally behind their flag.
Is there anyone that the people are looking at specifically right now as a person or even a movement that can de-escalate the situation?
By de-escalation means war? Do you mean war?
Yes, or to be a bit more diplomatic. Is there anyone that can
we
represent
passed
the country?
already this stage. We already passed this stage. Means we are during the war, which will because Iranian government position is we did whatever we could to de-escalate and negotiate, and we get bombed during the negotiation. And the situation is survival now. So I don't think in the near future there will be any potential real diplomatic negotiation. There will the war going to more deterministic on the future. One side or other side need to be gain some leverage. The U.S. bet that system will collapse and people uprise doesn't work. Now is more challenge of supply chain and ammunition stock. Means Iranian, they managed to retaliate and launch drones, which is much cheaper than anti-missile US, which is the Iranian drones almost 20K dollar, while the anti-missile is 2 million. It's not sustainable for US
Interesting.
to keep doing that. So now the bet is who can keep launching, keep their firepower longer. Iran hoped that by keeping deplete the U.S. anti-missile stockpile, so then they gain the leverage. And the U.S., they are going so aggressively to destroy the Iranian firepower to gain the leverage. So in both scenario, one of the side who gain win this supply chain matter, they actually going to win clearly the war. But if we stay in the middle, for Iran will be another long term war. It's like Iran and Iraq, and for the US will be another Vietnam.
It's a war on attrition, basically. So whoever relents first. But the question is, now that you've seen the past 6 days of fighting and the U.S. and Israel strikes on particularly the nuclear intelligence facilities, how weak is or vulnerable is Iran at the moment?
It's vulnerable the way that the air defense of Iran cannot completely manage to protect himself. So the U.S. and Israeli carpet bombing Iran, all the infrastructure, not the only nuclear site, but any military, civilian infrastructure, even the hospital and the schools get bombed, and they are keep doing that. At the same time, the Iranian managed to keep retaliate and launch the missile and drone and all the U.S. base in the West Asia, which is surprised everyone actually, and they keep attacking the Israel. So now in this situation is so difficult for anyone to say what's going to happen. As if Iran, as you said in your introduction, can keep to manage the blockage of Strait of Hormuz, the world economy going to be damaged severely, and the U.S. cannot manage to absorb that in the long term. So they want to gain leverage through the destroy the Iran firepower. But if Iran manage to keep launching until depletion, complete depletion of the U.S. and Israeli anti-missile ammunition, that can go much more inside of Iran.
What is the objective here of Iran not containing this between the two sides, but instead also bombing the rest of the Gulf states that also have the power to retaliate? Have they not, a lot have said this is an uncalculated risk that they have done, spreading the war towards other countries. Your thoughts on that?
The calculation, the logic of Iranian side is they are on existential attack, military attack from the bases, the U.S. bases in the region. So they attack where they get attacked. So and they were told their Persian Gulf country that will be happen, and the Gulf country. They almost use the U.S. base with the hope that they give them security shield against the Iran risk, which turn out to be have an inverse effect, means that
Correct,
actually
yeah.
get them in the risk. And the U.S. either they don't want or they don't prioritize to defend them when there is a risk for Israel, and they focus mostly on Israel. So I think the Persian Gulf countries, they are so vulnerable, and I don't see that they can really add something in the equation. And in the long term, they maybe change their position to outsource their security to U.S. The mostly what can determine the result of the war is, as I said, ammunition resilience. And the Iranian calculation is every time that they try to manage to negotiate with the US without the deterrence, that doesn't work. So they need to change the calculation of the cost for the US and allies. So their aim is to increase the cost of potential aggression against Iran. So this is what they want to do. The aim of the US was a short military campaign and get out the leadership and potential uprise. Now they don't have this. That's difficult. It seems that the only path that they have, that one way or different, they managed to completely destroy the firepower of Iranian. If not, there will be another Vietnam for long-term war.
They say that Iran doesn't have the backing at the moment of the strongest allies, China, Russia. They are focused on their own other interests. Your thoughts on that? Are they going to be getting involved? Is this going to be a bigger war, or is the war going to be contained?
It's different to say, to predict the future. For now, neither Russia, neither China do any direct involvement. However, the precision of the Iranian retaliation, that supposed some experts said that's due to Chinese intelligence sharing. That's enable Iran to have that much precise retaliation, which is a surprise for everyone, how they gain this capacity to retaliate and launch the missile with the precision, potentially with the Chinese help. But at least in the that will be limited to that. Maybe some potential economic support. Or I see recently some Chinese media said the Chinese stopped selling some energy refinement to the West. That can also be some help to Iranian, but I don't see the China and Russia involvement directly for now in this scope of war.
And do you see the involvement on the other side of their allies? Europe is quite divided, but will the US and Israel get much more support in the coming days?
Coming
Militarily
for
as
sure,
well.
they will need more ammunition. As I said, the main issue in this war is the ammunition supply chain, and apparently the Israel and US, they need that. However, for example, for TOD, they need in the Ukraine, they need in the East Asia, so there is a limit. And the rate of the launch, this kind of a smart missile, it's much, much higher than the rate of production. So it's not sustainable. So for sure that will be some supply chain support from the Europe. But in terms of the firepower, I don't see the way that Europe can be operationally be involved.
How strong are its other allies, the Hezbollah and the other powers in the axis of power right now?
But the Hezbollah is surprised because Hezbollah is supposed to be destroyed completely last year. But apparently now the recent day, they managed to launch a rocket missile toward Israel, especially today and yesterday. So that's a surprise, because every in the West, every expert assumed that Hezbollah just destroyed and they lost their military capacity. Yemenis, they don't have the military capacity to damage Israel, but they have the operation capacity to disrupt the supply chain of the oil through the Red Sea. So that could accelerate this effort of Iranian to blockage Hormuz Strait, if this disruption coming to Red Sea as well. So the economic shock for the whole world economy will be bigger.
you seen this happening before? Give us your thoughts on oil as a key player here in this war and what we expect to happen. As you mentioned, the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, now controlled by the IRGC, is an announced blockade, but not an internationally accepted blockade. So it still remains open. Effectively, nobody just wants to pass through. The U.S. has mentioned that there's going to be escorts to maintain the flow of oil. How important is this, and how precisely is Iran going to manage the oil supply globally?
So it's huge importance because almost 20% of the world energy go through the Strait of Hormuz, which is the Strait of Hormuz geographically, even on the map, it looks like big, but where the huge oil navy can go past is like a small, tiny channel, so Iran can target them easily. So, which is happened already the case, and not just for oil, for gas and other products. So, and this 20% globally represent about 80% of the Asia energy. So there's a huge impact on the world energy. There is the reserve to absorb some short-term shock, even though we have almost more than 10% rise of the price, but this is for short-term. Because of the reserve, because of also the hope that this can be short-term war. But if Iranian manage to keep blockage for long-term, and because almost any strategic reserve of the country, especially the East Asia, is about for 1 or 2 weeks.
Yes.
After 2 weeks, this reserve is out of reserve, so that will be a world economic shock, especially the country like Japan, that they import the majority of the resource for all their export. And for now, only Iranian allow the Russian, the China cargo to pass by. So it's a huge leverage if Iranian can manage to keep blockage.
Final question, Amze, and this is probably going to be quite a long discussion. The future of Iran that you see right now. So from our reading, we have 3 possible scenarios. The first, you have a successor, which is the son of the Ayatollah, so Mojtaba Khamenei, which is backed by the IRGC. So it will still be the theocratic regime, but weakened, and continuing possibly through a military rule. You've got the son of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, which you mentioned is not very popular right now. And the third option, which is complete chaos and a civil war, which the U.S. wanted to start. And it might end up another Syria, another Libya, another Iraq. What is your reading on this?
I would say the highly possible situation is either what is for sure that we are in the mass destruction of Iranian infrastructure. There is a carpet bombing campaign from the US and Israel, so the economy in Iran going to get destructed. So, and a lot of casualty, and the people died, infrastructure damage, so it is a long-term damage. How Iran will change their position in the region, it will depend on the result of the war. Is difficult to predict, but what is highly possible that's going to a long war, and we will have, as you said, a weakened Iran with more authoritarian leader and more involvement of military in every aspect of people's life. Or in the situation of the collapse of system, we will more have something like Libya, means a failed state with the civil war. This is the 2 main destination that I can see, unfortunately, for Iran. So neither of them is desirable, but this is the path that we are toward it.
What are you hoping, what gives the people of Iran hope, especially from your own personal perspective? You're an activist, you're a political refugee living in Paris, you haven't been home in years, maybe decades. Does this situation give you any hope whatsoever? And where would you see that coming from?
It's difficult to see any source of hope in this situation because all the alternatives are one way or different. It's not desirable. The son of Shah is so they are extreme right, classic fascist doctrine, with helping to working with Israel to bombing Iran. We have U.S. and Israel bombing Iran, and we have the authoritarian regime that now they present themselves as a force of protection the country. So it's and potentially the war will shift the priority of the people, the political change or any democratic reform in the country going back as a priority. In the country that the economy is distracted, it's difficult to say and talk and campaign for any positive change. Hopefully we will not end up civil war, but if the civil war is a total destruction. So there is that rare time in my life that it's difficult to find a source of hope for a situation, source of hope backed by fact. I wish that the war ended. I wish that the people can change pacifically for more democratic situation, more economic prospect in Iran. But this hope and wish now is not backed by the reality that I can see. This war, this destruction, carpet bombing campaign will distract Iran, will destabilize the region. We will have a regional war that will impact everyone economically in the world and security-wise whole region. So I don't see any positive outcome out of it.
Difficult words there, but thank you very much for your time with us this morning. Hamze Galebi, Iranian analyst and commentator. Good morning. In other news, the Department of Finance said the government is ready to take swift action to cushion the impact of rising global oil prices on Filipino consumers and the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. The agency is closely monitoring oil price movements as tensions in the region continue to threaten energy supply. The Department of Energy has also begun coordinating with local oil companies to implement staggered fuel price increases in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, the government is preparing targeted assistance, including fuel subsidies for public utility vehicle operators and separate support for farmers and fisher folk to help stabilize transport and food prices. Senators are calling for the resignation of certain Filipino personnel assigned in the Middle East for alleged negligence. Senate Foreign Affairs Committee Chair Erwin Tulfo claimed the personnel were among the first to leave when airstrikes erupted between Iran and the joint forces of Israel and the United States. Tulfo specifically referred to staff from the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Department of Migrant Workers, and the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration.
Kung natatakot kayo, pag hupa ito, lumayas kayo dyan, mag-resign kayong lahat. Wala naman kayong mga silbi. Kailangan yung tumulong. 24/7, sabi ng Pangulo, dapat kayo bukas. Hindi yung, hindi pa tatawag mga senador, tsaka pa lang kayo bubuksan ninyo mga telepono ninyo.
Senate Migrant Workers Committee Chair Rafi Tulfo added that distressed overseas Filipino workers in the Middle East have complained about unavailable staff and unresponsive hotlines.
Dito nga sa Bahrain, may advice rin sila na close sila bukas March 1. This was several days ago. Sino ang sasagot sa amin, mga multo ng OWA dito sa Bahrain? Ay Lord na lang, bahala sa amin. So ibig sabihin, yan nga po, marami ang ganun na nauna pang magsarado ang opisina ng OWA or DMW or DFA, nauna pa at mag-absent. So siguro we make sure
Opo.
this time na bukas po ang lahat ng matanggapan natin.
Stay tuned. Morning Matters will be back after this short break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Attorney Raymond Balad confirmed that his client Ramil Madriaga was threatened while detained at Camp Bagong Diwa in Taguig City. In an interview with Storycon, Balad said CCTV footage captured the incident and added that they will request a transfer of Madriaga's detention. Meanwhile, he revealed that Madriaga received a massive bribe offer to stop testifying against Vice President Sara Duterte. The offer reportedly ranged from 500 million pesos to 1 billion pesos. Madriaga, however, told his lawyer he would continue to testify despite the bribe offer.
So itong nangyari noong March 3, 5 o'clock, around 5 o'clock, nung palabas na siya doon sa second gate, yung control gate, may nagtatagong lalaki daw doon sa gilid at paglabas niya, bigla raw binuksan ng lalaki yung gate at kinumpronta siya. And then, alam mo yung action na parang tinutusok-tusok siya sa tagiliran ng daliri. And then, alam mo yung parang naghahamon ng away. Tapos, and then nung tinutusok sa tagiliran, and then nung parang may dudukutin sa likod yung lalaki, bigla na raw tinulak na malakas ni Ramil doon sa grills. Sa isang sa gilid nung binabanggit siyang tinulak niyang papalayo at nagsisigaw siya ng tulong sa guard. And then nagresponde yung mga jail guard. And then March 4 ng gabi, mga around 9:30 hanggang alas 12 ng gabi, nagkaroon ng investigation, nag-view ng CCTV. Talaga nangyari yung konfrontasyon na yon between that detainee saka ni Ramil Madriaga. Ang huling usapan ni Ramil doon sa isang kasama niya sa isang organisasyon is, to quote yung words, yung salita ni Ramil, may 500 million dito to 1 billion, name your price. You don't need to recant, basta wag ka lang magtestigo. Some words to that effect. Ganun yung parating sa kanya. Ganong amount. Basta name your price, bahala ka. Ang recollection ko sa pag-usap namin, kung di ako nagkakamali, kung hindi classmates sa College of Law, kasamaan sa isip.
Inday Sara.
Kasi remember siyang convener ng Inday Sara. Yung asosasyon nila na, although tawag natin Inday Sara is my president, iba naman talaga ang meaning yan. Yung parang, kalimutan ko na yung meaning nun mga kasamaan daw nila yan sa isip sa ibang probinsya. Na yung iba pa dyan nagtatrabaho sa gobyerno, ayaw nga niyang banggitin yung tunay na pangalan. Sabi ko, you will have to mention that later on, yung tunay na pangalan kahit na nasa gobyerno sila. In the meantime, binigyan niya lang ako ng mga alias. Meron nagtatrabaho sa DPWH Central Legal Department. Tapos merong isang nagtatrabaho na sabi niya sa LRA, Register of Deeds, kung di San Juan, Makati, basta NCR area.
Over to sports, the Signal Super Spikers dominated the Zeus Coffee Thunderbells in straight sets in the PVL All-Filipino Conference. Vanny Gandler led Signal with a game high of 20 points and 13 excellent receptions. Now with the victory, Signal improves to 5-2 in the standings while the Thunderbells drop to 1-6. In another match, the PLDT high-speed hitters showed great composure, outlasting the Farm Fresh Foxies in a gritty 5-set duel. Savvy Davison led PLDT with a monster triple-double, recording 32 points, 12 excellent digs, and 13 excellent receptions. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you just the right start to your morning. Let's now make the day matter. I'm Dani Laurel. Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time.